Welcome to Live Today. I am so excited to have our friends Chris and Jamie Bailey join us again from Expedition Marriage. They are great. If you haven't found them, find them. Look at them on social media, YouTube, all kinds of places. But you guys are doing some really good work getting under the surface of habits that hold marriages back. So first, I want to welcome you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thanks for
thank
having us
you.
again.
I'm so excited to hear what you say. I just got to jump right into it. So, but it is great to see you guys, and I love everything that you guys do, and I love that at Also Marriage we get to partner with you on things, and
Yeah.
it's a blessing, and it's just fun to have people with kindred hearts and spirits,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
the importance of God's plan for marriage in people's lives. So I love that. Okay, so let's start out. Talk about what you mean by the term distorted thoughts.
Mm.
Sure. Yeah. Because this is a big one. A lot of people aren't recognizing, maybe in little bits, but
Mhm.
we like to make it analogous to wearing glasses. Where
Mhm.
that you're looking through a lens that's off, but you might not know how much it's distorting how
Mhm.
you see the world.
Mhm.
And how it's affecting your thoughts, because our thoughts will affect our feelings, and feelings will
Right.
affect how we behave.
Right.
And so, so it's important to, and God has a few things to talk about, our thoughts and how we should focus them, and the things we should be looking at and focusing on. So, one of the I guess, funnest examples that we have is that idea of, okay, whenever you get a new prescription for glasses, or they get them upgraded, it's kind of like, wow, I knew my eyes were bad, but I didn't know how bad they were.
Yeah. Or maybe you didn't even know.
Yeah, true.
When I
Right.
had horrible vision and I underwent LASIK surgery a long time ago. And after the surgery, I come home and I was in our daughter's room, who had just got new hardwood floors. And within a second, I'm like yelling for Chris. I'm like, our floors are ruined. Something has happened to our floors. I mean, I'm just like, what is going on?
Look at this.
It was wood grain. I had
never seen.
I had no idea
Mm-mm.
something like wood grain existed. I had never seen it because my vision was so off. And so sometimes we know, like, we know my vision's a little bad, but there are things I had just never seen it this way at all. So I didn't even know it existed.
Yeah.
So when you think about distortions, it could be the whole range. It could be something, wow, I never even knew this way of thinking was possible, or this idea was possible. Or it can be, well, it's kind of close. It's
Yeah.
kind of close. But regardless, it's when we start thinking distorted things that are altered from the truth, and what reality is and what the truth is.
That's so interesting. I just started to deal on assumptions, and I think it kind of falls into that too. We
Yeah.
make this assumption, and then we act like it's truth, and we never check it out with our spouse, and then we live that out. And boy, that can be real distorted in thought. Most
Yes.
of my assumptions about Nancy and marriage have not been right. It's just not. And so I learned that I've got to check those out. And so
Yeah.
she can say, yeah, for the one time you're right. Or she can say, no, let's talk about that.
Yeah.
The one
No,
time
you're way
right.
off.
But I think we can all do that. And
Mhm.
it's so interesting how we can hang on to that and just continue. Like that's a great example with glasses and eyes and stuff. You just put off going and going, and then you finally figure it out, and you think, oh my gosh, the world looks different now.
Yes.
I can
Yeah.
really see it.
Yeah, I probably
Yeah.
shouldn't have been driving.
Right. That was also a thought.
Exactly. So let's talk about emotional rationalization. And we're doing it sometimes we're not even aware that we're doing it. So what does that term mean?
Sure. Well, and this is one of the distorted automatic thoughts, is emotional rationalization, or, or reasoning, kind of an idea where we actually take our feelings and we let them be the definer of what reality is. So, because I feel like I don't belong here, well, then I don't, and then I must not belong here. I feel like nobody wants me around. So it must mean that nobody wants me around. Or my personal favorite is, because it affected our marriage, I feel like Jamie's mad at me, so she must be mad at me. And of course, then I get kind of loaded.
You act as if I am mad at you.
I act as if you're mad at me. And so you're wondering why I'm being a jerk. Because you're mad at me.
No. So it's basically just taking what you're feeling and accepting it as complete truth. And that the feeling is a fact. And that is usually, more often than not, farthest from the truth.
Oh yeah. Feelings are bad drivers. They take us into the ditch.
Yeah. And I think I love that you talked about that we're not aware of it, because I think we're not a lot of times. And maybe one time she was mad, and so, well, she has a look like she did then, and so you just assume she's mad again without saying, "Hey, are you upset with me?"
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
And so then you get mad back, and then all of a sudden you're fighting over something that was never there.
Yeah. You started this. No, you started it.
That's exactly how it happens.
No, I think that's so good. And I think just being aware of our feelings are so powerful. And like you were saying, Chris, I mean, we can jump to all kinds of things because of our feelings.
Oh yeah.
We think, we profile our spouse, all those kind of things. And a lot of times our feelings just aren't the right interpretation of something.
Right.
No, well, because we're self-protective a lot, and that's part of the challenge. And so if if I feel like something's going on and I'm going to accept that as truth, well, then how do I protect myself? Because I didn't like the last time Jamie was mad at me.
Yeah. And now I'm not gonna let her do that to me again. So I can put my defenses up, or my walls up, or I gotta leave, or whatever. We end up making some decisions on that. So do you have another example in real life that you guys have experienced that you think would really be something else to share?
Well, I think there's a few different distortions we can have, and they kind of become our go-tos with a lot of things. And that's how they become unrecognizable, because it kind of becomes the filter that we view life and we view situations and circumstances with. A couple that I was guilty of was one, it's called like all or nothing thinking. And that's
black or white.
I mean, that's self-explanatory. It's, you never do this, you always do this, and you're just thinking it's in such concrete ways that this always happens every time. And when I'm thinking that he always does something that's negative, that is 100% going to impact how I view my husband.
Absolutely.
Or if you never appreciate anything I do, I'm now going to look at him a lot differently. And I may not be able to ever figure out why I'm despising my husband or resenting my husband more and more.
Yeah.
And it's because I'm labeling him as somebody who never appreciates me, or who always does this on purpose. So that all or nothing thinking, I think, is a common one. And another one I was guilty of is catastrophic thinking. It is going to the worst case scenario as my first line of thought.
Yeah, making mountains out of molehills.
Yes, and I'm somebody who, we're all, shaped by our upbringing.
Yeah,
and certain things that have happened, I experienced a lot of worst case scenarios and a lot of pain. So therefore, I'm always on the lookout for it. And so this could be something as simple as him maybe being home. Back in the day, he'd be home, coming home late from work. And my thought wasn't, oh, he must have had a meeting, he's getting gas. No, it's either, he's dead on the side of the road, there's an accident that's happened, or, it's that woman at work. It's that woman at work. He's probably having an affair. He's done this, or, he totally disrespects me, doesn't even care that I'm cooking dinner, and all of these worst case scenarios. And you throw that out there as it's a faulty way to protect yourself.
Yeah.
It's almost like, if I can think of the worst case scenario, I can plan for it, which will make it hurt me less, which is just such a lie. And so part of that is, when he's late for work, there are so many other options that could be going on. But with that catastrophic thinking, automatically it's nope, none of those matter. It's this is what I know happened. The worst case has happened. And so those are some of the ones I struggled with.
And then, of course, when I do get home, I'm greeted very kindly. You're home. I missed you so much.
Glad you're alive.
I'm so glad you're here. Or it could have been, where have you been?
Right.
Why haven't you called? Why didn't you tell me you're going to be late?
No, you can just go crazy with that. And I think, and so then you look at him that way. And you mentioned, Jamie, when you're saying that family of origin, because I think in my experience as counseling, a lot of those things do come from our family of origin, what we observed with either our parents or maybe past relationships. And then we just carry those into our marriage, sometimes without even realizing it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, and it doesn't help. I mean, it does. There's perfect design to it, but we are designed to kind of self-protect. You know, our brain has a job of, you know what, let's keep you alive.
Yeah.
Let's keep you alive.
That's simple.
And whenever we're hurt in the past, I mean, even small hurts, but of course, the larger it is, the more trauma you can have there, that impacts us. And we've got a brain that goes, oh, what just happened? What do I need to do to make sure that never happens again?
Yeah.
You know, you were rejected a lot as a child. Okay, well, when my husband's talking to me and he turns his back on me, very different situation than being rejected by a parent. But it's enough for my brain to go, that's familiar.
Yeah, it feels
that's familiar.
too much like before.
Feels.
And boom, you know, and me personally, you know, a lot of personalization, but grew up as a people pleaser.
Yeah.
And so and that's why, you know, part of like the idea of Jamie being mad is so, you know, affecting to me because then, okay, I failed. You know, I'm taking it personally. So, you know, I personalize it. Yeah, I did something wrong. I messed up. I blew it. How can I fix it? How can I make this right?
Yeah. And that's distorted because that's not, now sometimes that is the situation,
Yeah, true.
you know, but you want to, you know, check to see if it is, because there are other things. He's thought I was mad at him a lot when I'm just mad at a situation. I'm frustrated at a computer. I'm aggravated with something, you know, one of the kids has done. And he would read anytime I would get upset, he would personalize that. And that would kick off a radar in him that's like, oh, what did you do wrong? What did you do wrong? And kick him into people pleaser. And then when he couldn't do that enough, then he would get very defensive and would become very passive aggressive. And he had no idea that he had this filter, this distorted filter that was, you know, saying everything that goes on that's negative is your fault.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just go in that cycle that you would just keep going in that cycle over and over again.
Right.
So I wish we get show of hands here because people would be saying, I do this, or I've done this, or my spouse does that. So if somebody's listening, they think, wow, that's us. How do you start changing it? Where do you begin?
Yeah, great question.
Yeah. Well, I think the first thing is you've got to recognize that you're having these thoughts. And the best way to do that is kind of pay attention to your feelings, or your triggers in a sense. You know,
the response is, well, even let's take a step back. Just even knowing that these are such a thing.
Right.
That there are these distorted thoughts.
That it's possible that you're not getting this right.
Yeah.
It's possible you've made the wrong assumption. And that's, you know, the next step of it is like realizing when I get elevated, because these things are usually on the heels of being elevated or that emotional trigger.
You know, where I'm feeling withdrawal, like I want to withdraw or any kind of protection type of things.
And when that happens, you've got to recognize then it's time. I've got to start getting curious. This is time for me to ask questions. You know, questions like, what am I really worried about? What am I really afraid of? What's really going on? Or even what do I need right now? What would I like? And so kind of identifying what is actually happening right now instead of, because we've got to like put the brakes on those runaway thoughts. You know, we've got to step on the gas pedal and go, okay, hang on a minute. I'm feeling like he's dead on the side of the road, wrecked his car. But are there any other options here? Which is another great question. What else could this be? And with him, Jamie's mad at me, could be, what else could she be mad at?
Sure. Or what else could be going on? You know, and even can throw out as much at what percentage she be mad at me? Because it's a possibility. I could be dead on the side of the road, but what's the likelihood of that versus what's more likely to be the case in that situation?
Right.
And I think you even mentioned that, Dr. Kim, as far as just asking. It's just
It's just like, and I think it's so easy. That part of it seems so easy, and yet we don't a lot of times. We just go with our assumption and not check it out. I think if couples, I think it is give each other permission to ask and to check those things out so you can check it out. And if you're right, then you got to deal with that. But that's okay. Right. At least you know you're dealing with something that's real as opposed to something you've assumed or you've just fabricated in your mind.
Exactly. I like to. I feel like I was really clever in coming up with what I called the question. And the question is, honey, are you upset with me or are you just upset?
That's so good.
And it was so simple too. That's what
I know. But we'd rather complicate it a little bit. Well, and that's so non-threatening then to Jamie. You're not judging her. You're not attacking her. You're just asking a question. And then she says, yeah, Chris, I'm a little upset with what you did. Okay, well, let's talk about it. No, I'm not. I'm frustrated with the computer or whatever.
Yeah. And some of the times, he would like, are you mad at me? And I'm like, who hurt you? Like, no, like, how did you even get that idea? Because I mean, those distortions can go so far off to where he asked me and I'm like, baby, no. And, and for us, what I tell him, like, honey, you will know if you have upset me, where we're at. But sometimes, like, you don't realize how far off to where he'll ask me that sometimes, and he still will use that because that's how you clarify. And from my perspective, it's like, I don't even know how he got that, how he got there, but it has become a simple, no, I'm fine. And then boom, we move on.
Yeah, that's so good. And for you to be able to accept, okay, this is something he's got to work through. So yeah, I'm just gonna tell him, no, we're okay.
Yeah,
I mean,
you're there to help each other.
her. Yeah. And then you like you said, I love it. And then you move on. You don't stay stuck there.
Yeah.
You don't sit there and say, oh, you're lying to me. No, you trust each other to say, if there's something wrong, she's gonna tell me it's wrong.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And that would be, you brought up another distortion right there, because sometimes they are like, you can ask the question, they're like, no, you're not telling the truth. You kind of assume
that assigning.
Right. You assign your spouse's emotions and you assign their feelings about things.
No, you're saying that, but that's not how you really feel.
Yeah.
Right? You tell me that, but you don't feel that way.
Yeah. Or you're just my husband. You have to say that.
Yeah.
I don't believe that I really look good. You have to say that. And so that's another distortion all on itself.
Yeah, absolutely. And those can go all kinds of places.
Yes, they can.
Yeah. From how do I look in these jeans to we're out,
Yeah, that's right.
Which is a question a wife, I'll say, should never ask her husband. I don't think there's a win.
No.
To that question.
There's not.
If you find one, let me know.
No, and I can tell you've got to get the timing right. You can't answer right away because we're never going to believe that. And you can't take too long to answer because then it's like, no, you already don't think. So it's got to be let me look real quick and then say, yes, you look great.
Or you could go,
the timing.
Did we leave the stove on? I think I smell gas. I got to go check that.
I got to go back to work for something.
Yeah.
So one thing that I think that happens, and I see that in counseling, and usually I'll tell somebody, if a couple comes in and only one's working, finally I'll just tell the other person, you're doing everything, but you can't make this happen by yourself. So if someone really wants to work on this area of their marriage, but the spouse isn't on board, what would you advise them to do?
Well, for starters, I mean, you've got to do what we were just talking about and identify your own, work on your own. And because we are our biggest influencers to one another. I have the most influential voice in his life and vice versa. Right. And so don't forget that, and that's God's design. So God is going to use that. And when we decide to step back and grow in him, and we start taking every thought captive and make it obedient to Christ, the Lord is going to use our obedience to him to show our spouse what they need to see and what they need to hear. So have hope in that alone, but to make it more practical, look for those elevated feelings, look for confusing responses. If I've done something that all of a sudden he is being jerky about, and I'm like, I don't know why he's mad. Well, it's because he's thinking that I'm mad at him. But if they give a response that's confusing to you or doesn't fit the situation, right, or if they get elevated really quickly, do the same thing we're asking you to do to yourself. Ask the questions. What's really going on right now? Is there something that's upset you about this? What do you need my help with right now? What do you need from me? What is it, you need me to hear? And so just use their elevated emotions. And now we're not talking about gaslighting situations. And you have emotionally abusive, you're not responsible to change any kind of abuse or anything like that. But if you've got somebody who just, gets upset quicker, leaning in and going, hey, what's really going on? Because our typical response is, if somebody gets escalated, is defensive.
Sure.
Yes.
But if we allow ourselves to get curious and go, you know what? Maybe they've got a distortion going on right now. Let me bring some clarity. Let me clarify some things. Because if I would have said to him when he starts acting a little jerky because he's being defensive, what's going on? He's like, well, you got mad at me for this. Like, baby, I didn't get mad at you. And now we can clarify that. Well, I thought you were mad at me because you said this. No, I'm mad at the computer.
Yeah.
I'm mad at this situation. And now we can start, deflating those big emotions. And so asking questions and not being so defensive and thinking, you know what, there might be an opportunity for growth here instead of an automatic chance to defend myself.
Yeah.
Well, I love you saying that because it gives you a chance to work together on this
Yes.
problem, not
Yeah.
that you're out there.
Yeah,
doing
that's
it.
the greatest gift of marriage. One of the greatest
Oh,
gifts
huge.
is we
Absolutely.
have resources, and so many couples miss that.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah. I see that, and I just work so hard to try to get people to understand what it means to be a team and the
Mhm.
difference that makes in a marriage relationship if you're doing it together.
Yeah.
Huge. Yeah, huge. You know, and just so to let everybody know, that computer scenario and all that, true story.
It's real.
Yeah. Well, I
It's
can
real.
identify that because Nancy has a problem with her computer too. So I get it. I get it very much
Mhm.
so. That's really good stuff. I wanted to mention a couple things that you guys have a devotional out for newlyweds, correct?
Mhm.
That
Mhm.
is
What's the
correct. The
title of
Newlyweds
it?
Couples Devotion. I'm sorry.
What's
Title.
it? And
Oh, the
title is,
Newlywed Couples Devotion.
which is that's very creative.
Yeah, I know.
I like
Little,
it.
little on the
Straight to the
nose, but you know.
But the thing that we were talking about before we went live that I'm excited about is you have a
Mhm.
devotional coming out for men, and that you guys did it
Yes.
together. Talk a little bit about that because I am really excited about that.
Yeah, we're actually very excited to start reaching the men. They're
Mhm.
just across the board, everybody, and I know you know yourself in marriage ministry. Our audience primarily is women. It's the women who are reaching out for resources and looking, and they're the ones wanting, counseling appointments. And the men that are calling, it's the last ditch efforts. Oh no, my
Yeah.
wife has left. And so
Absolutely.
they're late to the
Mhm.
party with that. And so reaching these men, and the way we wrote this devotional, is putting together things that will address real life issues that they have.
Yeah, very practical.
It's not just this is what men do and man up for this and all that. It's like, this is the man God called you to be.
Mhm.
This
Yeah, I
is
love
the
it.
man God calls you to be in your home, the relationship he calls you to have with him individually. And it's very encouraging. It's very practical. And we get in there, roll up our sleeves and talk about the real stuff.
I think it's
Yeah.
going to be a great resource.
Oh, thanks so much. Yeah, it's just
Mhm.
it's meant to just lift up, it's to build
Mhm.
up. As men, I think
Mhm.
it's too easy for there to be people out there going, "Oh, you're doing this wrong and you're
Mhm.
messing up," and calling people out versus calling
Yeah.
them up.
Mhm.
I love that. Out instead of not out, but up.
Yeah.
That's really
Yeah.
good. Well, Chris and Jamie lead Expedition Marriage, and tell people where they can find you.
You can find us. You can find everywhere we're at through our website, which is expeditionmarriage.org. We're primarily on Instagram, and we've got a new YouTube going on, so you can find us over there as well. But you can find everywhere we're at and all of our resources and our podcast on our website.
Awesome. You guys do a great job. It's an honor to know you and to do ministry alongside of you guys. And thanks for spending the time today with me. Thank you.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
absolutely. We
Thank
love
you so
doing this
much.
with you.